So hello and welcome to this for joining us for this second session of the Digital Publishing Summit. So we're thrilled to have you here with us for this session. What are the trends and tendencies in the digital book market in Europe? My name is Marie-Laurence and I'm a member of the organizing team at EDRLab. I would like to start by thanking our two speakers for this session. So they will give us valuable insight into the digital book market in Europe. First, Enrico Turrin, Deputy Director at the Federation of European Publishers. He will present the data collected by the Federation through its annual survey of Publishers Association, focusing on the mainstream channels. We will then hear from analyst Rüdiger Wischenbart, who will share estimates on the scope and dynamic growth of alternative publishing models. Before we begin, I would like to express once again our gratitude to our sponsors, who are Rhythm Foundation, Glassbox, Audiobooks, and the Mark for their support. You can go check out their website. You can find them on the lobby. And during this session, we really encourage you to engage with the speakers. You can use the Q&A tool at the bottom, and you can send your question. And toward the end of the session, we'll have a dedicated time for Enrico and Rüdiger to reply and address your questions. Just a quick reminder, we are recording this session, so you can catch up later on any missed detail. And EDRLab members will also gain access to a written synthesis of each session of the summit. So also check that out. Thank you once again, everyone, for being here. And now I will give the floor to Enrico and Rüdiger to bring us into the world of the digital book market in Europe and talk about the trends and tendencies.
Thank you very much, Marie-Laurence. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. As we heard, as you know, we're here to give you a few indications of where the digital book market in Europe is, where it's going, what are the main trends. I'll start sharing my screen, of course. Now you should be seeing it. And as you heard, I'm from the Federation of European Publishers. We are an umbrella organization. We have as members 29 national associations of publishers of books, learned journals, and educational materials from 28 countries in Europe. So we represent really the vast majority of publishers in Europe. And one of the things we do is to try and collect information, data, statistics on the book market in Europe and provide some briefings, some presentations, and elaborate on this data. You will probably know already that it's not at all easy to find information about book market, especially from some countries, and even more, strangely enough, it's difficult to find information on digital book sales. So just a word of caution, take whatever I tell you with this in mind, that is, sorry, this is not really easy to get a clear idea, so that we do our best, we survey our members, but we have a very general view, and yeah, the punctual data are not necessarily the ones that you see, but at least we have more or less an idea. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of the main data on the publishing sector, and then try to dive into the more digital part of the market. Overall, it seems that, okay. Overall, we have seen the evolution that you might see or might not see on the screen because my computer is going crazy. What you see is the net publishers turnover for the last about 20 years, according to the survey we make of our members. We see that after a peak in 2007, when publishers net turnover reached 24.5 billion euro, we had a long period of decline / stagnation. One immediate explanation is the financial crisis that hit starting in 2008, but there must be other factors that were in play to explain this this kind of trend. I don't have a firm answer, but among the possibilities, there's the it can be excluded that this came in well, at the same time when digital became a reality, became something to deal that publisher had really to deal with in the book market. Then well, the market was giving was showing signs of recovery in 2019, and then 2020 came COVID, which after all did not globally provoke a huge decrease in turnover. We estimated about 1%, which, considering what things looked like at the very beginning, was not a bad result at all. But then behind this synthetic figure of -1%, there is a wide array of different situations among countries, among sectors, among categories of books, genres, among different kinds of players, among trade channels. So behind this, there is a huge variety of results. And then there's also, well, there was a shift towards digital, a shift towards online. Nothing very surprising, but has to be borne in mind. Then 2021, a big bounce back, plus 6.5%. Market, well, the net turnover reached 23.6 billion euro, an increase that had not been seen in many years. Again, driven by very different underlying forces and situations. And then the latest data we have from 2022 lead us to believe that 2022 will have ended more or less at the same level of turnover as 2021. The market value, so at course price, being always around 37-38 billion euros. Now, looking at the number of new titles published every year, after peaking in 2017 with more than 600,000 titles, there's been a bit of wobbling, but we noted the data for the time being we have until 2021, a decline in the number of titles, which now reached some 575,000 in 2021. Definitely in 2020, COVID had an impact in the total number of titles, but the continued decline makes us believe that there might be an ongoing attempt at rationalizing the production of title on behalf of publishers. And already to start having a look at the digital side of things, as I told, it's not very easy to tell, but we estimate that on top of these close to 600,000 titles in print that are published every year, some 200 to 300 new titles come out in digital, meaning that between 1/3 and half of all new titles in Europe come out also with a digital version. Looking at the active catalog, that is the development here of commercially available titles in all categories, so everything that you can buy from European publishers on the European market, we see, in this case, constant growth across the years, reaching more than 13 million titles commercially available all over Europe in 2021. And again, with a significant digital component, which we estimate at around 3.5 million. So more or less, there are 3.5 million ebooks and audiobooks in digital available to European consumers. A bit more on the formats. This is calculated on data 2021 because we will have the detailed picture of 2022 at the Frankfurt Book Fair. But already you get an idea of the overall dimensions and also a bit of the trends. In 2021, we estimated print books to represent still some 85% of the market. So at least for what we can observe, print remains the main format of choice for readers. Digital, so ebooks, that anyway represent some between 12 and 13%. And the most interesting and noticeable phenomenon, audiobooks enter the picture, representing 2.5% of the overall market in 2021. And I already think that this was an underestimate because it was difficult to come by data in a number of countries. But with rates of growth that mean that the share of audiobooks is bound to increase significantly in the coming years. We will already see a significant increase for 2022, 2023, and still for the years to come. Whereas ebooks seem to have been stagnating for a few years, with an exception during COVID, where all digital formats went up, as well as online sales. So that there remains the question whether ebooks have been a sort of unfulfilled promise, because they were supposed to maintain the sustained levels of growth of the initial years. They were supposed to really disrupt the market, take over, open new audiences. It again, taking into account the difficulty in having really reliable data, these are legitimate questions, but the answers might not be so obvious, and Rüdiger will have something to say about that afterwards. But on the other hand, we see that audiobooks might really be opening new audiences and new ways of reaching readers, reaching users that ebooks might not have achieved. So a look at what we know about the market in 2022, again, to give you an idea, and also about the format. So in general, in 2022, we see mixed results. A number of the major markets in continental Europe, Italy, France, Germany, decline of 2.5 to 4%. Same in Sweden. But considering the very good results of 2021, most of our members tell us that even -2, -4% is not that bad a result, given what happened the previous year. And then other countries doing quite well. UK, most of the Nordics, Spain, Portugal doing very well now, but Portugal is a country, a market that took really a very severe hit during COVID. So they have more ground to recover, more have a longer way to catch up. And now, looking at the formats, we see that whereas in the main market in Central Western Europe, the sales of print books are more or less in line with the overall sales of the market, it's clear that in the Nordics, any growth or any limitation of decrease that there is due to digital sales. You see, in particular, and when I say digital, it's basically audio. You see the increase of audiobooks in pretty much all countries, with still quite staggering figures, for example, in Finland, in Norway. Whereas there's a decline in ebook sales in again in many countries. To an extent, could be due to the again difficulty in capturing phenomena such as the rise of subscription services, but there's also more and more a move towards 2019, which for a while we will probably keep calling the last normal year. And we see that in all territories there is the market is still well above, at least publishers turnover is well above what it was before COVID, which is well, which is a good sign, although it is troubling that the largest market in Europe, that is Germany, still has not recovered by the end of 2022 to the level that it had in 2019, and that of German consumers to spend in times of uncertainty. We look again at, in particular, sales by format, and once again we see that print sales are markedly lower in most of the Nordic countries, whereas they follow roughly the trend of the rest of the market in this Western and South, particular to the figures for audiobooks, because in the last 3 years we see growth in audiobooks of well, up to more than 220% in Finland, almost 180% in Italy, 113% in Denmark, more than 80% in Norway and Sweden. So really a very, very significant phenomenon here with the sales of digital audiobooks. That is something that we had not seen in the book market in a very long time. So of course, this kind of growth cannot be sustained in the long run, but for the time being, audiobooks are really going strong, and it's something to keep an eye on. 2023, for the first few months, we see again a mixed picture with a few countries still growing, some signs of possible good news from Germany. Nordics slowing down a bit, but after many years of growth, this is also understandable. But in any case, the main moments for book sales are usually the summer holidays, the so-called rentrée in France, and then Christmas. So it's just to have an idea, but it's hard to extrapolate trends for the rest of the year. And again, we see that in any case, for the first few months of the year, at least the book sales are doing better than in the same period in 2019. And with this rate of growth, even Germany would finally be back at the level of 2019. But again, as I say, we will have to see with the significant moments for book sales across the year. And again, knowing that the synthetic data hide a number of different situations underneath. So a couple of comments before I pass the word to friend and colleague Rüdiger. As I said, paradoxically, it's difficult to find data, reliable data on digital markets, but not least because the main retailer does not really provide any data on sales, and it's a retailer that you all know and has a dominant or almost dominant position in the majority of digital markets. We have to wonder whether the apparent stagnation of ebook sales is actually real. We have
It looks like we have lost Enrico. Maybe we wait just 1 minute. Otherwise, Rüdiger, you will jump in. So, Rüdiger, I think you can jump in and we'll check with Enrico what happens.
Hello, Gauthier. Hello, Marie-Laurence. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello?
Well.
Can you hear me well? Yes?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm sorry that Enrico could not properly wrap up, but he and I said, let's try to portray these ongoing statistics from two different angles. His angle was looking at what is the income, the revenue generated from books, print books, digital books by publishers. I'm taking a different angle. I'm trying to look from the angle of consumers, and that brings me to a different picture, as you will see in a second. Wait a moment. I don't see properly my. Okay, I will do it differently. Just a moment. I need to do it. I will turn that here. And I will bring over my presentation. Can you see now my presentation properly? Marie-Laurence, can you confirm that you see?
I can see it. It's perfect.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Okay. So I said I'm changing the angle from the publisher's view to the consumer's view. Those people, readers, listeners to audiobooks, who are just retrieving books from everywhere and in whatever format and way. And that changes a little bit the frame. Just a few weeks ago, I read in a blog of my very esteemed teacher and friend, Mike Schatzkin in New York, the book publishing business in which he has spent my working life since the early 1960s is disappearing. And why is it disappearing? Because crazy new things come in. For instance, suddenly we find our kids promoting printed books on a Chinese social media platform called TikTok, in short form digital video. We see Spotify or Webtoons, or I will come to that, the Tone is from a startup in Berlin, on the cell phones of our kids, and they behave totally different with all that stuff, which is in fact stories told in a bookish kind of format to the audiences in digital ways on platforms, but it's not a publisher picking up a manuscript from an author who trusts the gatekeeper, the publisher, to handle it, produce it, hand it over to the bookseller, and then bring it to the consumers. So there's suddenly something intrinsically different happening on the book business side. And how did I discover this? In a very, if you wish, awkward, because self-inflicting, self-criticizing way. Every year for 15 years, I produce a global ranking of the 50 largest publishing companies worldwide. And that global 50 publishing ranking, when I analyzed it for last year's edition, doesn't include all these things coming from Wattpad, Webtoon Studios, Disney, Storytel, etc. Not even the self-publishing, which has grown really, really strongly, like Kindle Direct Publishing or other. Among the largest trade or consumer publishing companies worldwide, only a small part, like the mangas produced by Kadokawa in Japan, are included in that ranking, but all the rest is escaping my attention as an analyst. And that is a little bit disturbing because it may say not that some data are wrong and other data are right, but some data portray parts of the industry and part of the book consumption. And for other parts which are overseen, we need different angles, different data, different approaches. I was looking at the German market a few years ago in a long-term perspective, 10 years from 2011 to 2020. And I did it from a different angle than Enrico. Enrico is looking, as I said, at the revenue, how much euros or crowns or whatever are generated by publishers. I was looking at the number of copies sold. Why? Because that includes all formats in print. It is only print. And it is not distorted by price rises. It's including hardcover and trade paperback and mass paperback. And we see two things. On the dotted line over 10 years, we see a continuous decline in the number of book copies coming from publishers, consumed, acquired by consumers. And we see, not in a staggering way, but the dark green area on the bottom is rising a little bit, which means among the top 1,000 best-selling titles in units sold, the top, which means for me, the top 100, top 200 titles are a little bit increasing in overall volume by comparison to the top 25, top 100, which are the real bestsellers. So somehow we see there are some shifts, and even the year 2020, which brought us the pandemic, didn't really have a big impact on that pattern. So we see, as Enrico has emphasized already as a question, that there are things happening that are sometimes escaping our attention. Livre Hebdo in France reported recently in an analysis of all the graphic novels and manga, etc., how much the share of graphic novels, manga, etc., has gained in user attention in France. 1 out of every 5 books from publishers consumed, bought by especially young audiences, comes from a manga published in France, translated very often from Japanese. Looking at Amazon, we have always the big trouble that Amazon is not at all sharing any significant statistics on their sales. But there is what we can really document even by Amazon numbers. There is a strange gap between the overall perspective, here is the example of the US, the American ebook revenue, which was, according to statistics from the Association of American Publishers, was going down by 10% in 2022. So that's quite a bit. And as in accordance with what Enrico told you, we see that decline of ebooks in the normal commercial channels on the one hand. But there's a different picture at the same time when we're looking at self-published ebooks at Amazon. And we have no idea how much is the turnover, or even less, how many copies are sold by Amazon in terms of self-published ebooks from Kindle Direct Publishing. But Amazon releases data how much they pay to authors as a bonus compensation when they are particularly strongly performing in their subscription program called Kindle Unlimited. And for the last year, 2022, according to Amazon's own figures, just that bonus amounted to $500 million US dollars in the year of 2022, which was up significantly, let's say 7-8% by comparison to 2021. So we have a strange gap. On the one hand, the Association of American Publishers records a drop in ebooks, and Amazon has a rise in bonus payments to authors from ebooks. And we can estimate, according to a German self-publishing association called Self-Publisher Bible, that just the sales for Kindle Unlimited overall worldwide amount to $200 to $250 million per month, which means $1.5 billion per year. Sorry, 2 billion, between 2 and 3 billion per year. That means we have a digital publisher called Amazon, and it's a mix, to be honest, in the definition. It's a publisher, it's behaving like a retailer, it's a kind of ecosystem in its own right, which by turnover equals the worldwide sales of the largest trade publishing groups like Hachette or Penguin Random House. So we are in a weird universe at once, which is that weird universe that Mike Judkin referred to when he said that old kind of book business is somehow transforming. How come? And I think the easiest way is when you look up a title, and ideally, as I did, a title for younger readers in any online selling platform, you will see a fascinating mix of different formats. The same book appears as a printed book, perhaps even a printed book in different editions at different prices, as an audio CD, perhaps even as a downloadable audiobook, as a Kindle ebook, and you can access it with a subscription. You can buy it. You can go to your bookshop and wrap your hands around it. So it became much more complicated. And again, I'm not very much interested in Amazon per se, but it's just a good case study. I could give you other case studies with the same effect. We see that these actors in the digital are catering to a mix of different formats. That is trivial. But the different formats come with different business models, sales by unit, subscription, streaming, etc. And as a consequence, also different distribution channels, platforms. So suddenly we have very complex ecosystems. And when you look at bestseller lists, like Livre Hebdo in France, the Spiegel bestseller list in in Germany, the New York Times or the Publishers Weekly bestseller list in the US. Of course, you think first, oh, that's really the best-selling books. But then you switch to one of the online platforms and realize their mix is composed of totally different titles and partly the same authors and partly different authors. Because what escapes to the standard best-selling lists are authors like that one who goes by the name of Catherine Shepard, but in fact she's born, grew up, and still lives in Germany. She does thrillers, but at one point she decided, I'm my own publisher, and she founded her own publishing company, Kabel Verlag. No one otherwise has heard, if you're not a reader of Catherine Shepard, of that publishing company. But they produce that partly that other type of publishing that I am referring to. Enrico, in the first half of our session, emphasized ebooks have by far not become that huge phenomenon appreciated by consumers that everybody had anticipated 15 years ago when the ebook market started. But saying just that the few ebook or the very limited ebook sales per se are everything that came out of this would be a very significant underestimation. Because the really interesting result, in my understanding, is that ebooks opened the door for an array of different models that coexist now. So it's not that ebooks cannibalize, replace printed books, and that's it. No, the replacement is not really very important, but self-published authors suddenly could happen very easily. Then came writing and reading platforms. If you look at things like Wattpad, in a Canadian platform, which began as a platform for fan fiction, so very, very reduced, and has now been acquired by a Korean conglomerate, Webtoons, and they are producing serialized storytelling across media, with games, with TV shows, movies, and in a very, very big scale as a global phenomenon. You see all that somehow grew out of that format that we call ebooks. And then you have all in the marketing, all the hybrid forms I emphasized already, what our kids do with TikTok, etc., etc. So the world we're living in is multi-format, multi-channel, and multi-business model. And that has indeed a very deep impact on what is the book business. Because, as you see on my slide on the left side, the book business is used to be about publishing, which means to produce products and sell these products as books to consumers. But now in the new multi world that we are living in, publishing is not so much about producing products, but it's about servicing authors and audiences. So production is replaced by a service model. We have seen that servicing shift in other industry. Everybody who is in digital, in the IT industry, is very familiar with the concept of software as a service. Usually, many pieces of software, we don't buy them once on a CD and then install it, but we are renting them on a subscription model. And it's not the originators, the middlemen, who are at the center of that industry, but it's the creators and the audiences. So that's a kind of new framework that I decided I want to clarify a little bit more with you here for that conference, but also I turned that into a report, and it would be a little bit silly to have a report that is just coming out in one form at one point in time, and then it's gone, because it would be outdated very quickly. So I decided to, again, have an iteration of versions, and the first one will come out, which will be a very compact, like this presentation here, a very short, compact overview, and you can find it on my website, wischenbart.com/beyond by early July. And then we will have 2 more iterations coming out in September and in November probably. Open for questions, and I'm very thankful for having had the opportunity here to introduce that work to you. Back to Marie-Laurence.
Thank you, Rüdiger, for your presentation, and we welcome back Enrico, who is logged in again with us. So to the audience, if you have any question, you can use the Q&A button to send them to our speakers, and they will reply. We still have a few minutes on this webinar, so feel free to send them.
And meanwhile, yeah, apologies for technical problems. I hope that at least I managed to get to the end of my presentation, but which basically ended with the open question: are we really capturing everything that there is when it comes to the ebook market? And as I knew, Rüdiger opened up a whole new world that might explain why apparently ebook market didn't fulfill the promise. But then I would like to kick off the debate by asking Rüdiger. So given the obviously limited reach of the, well, let's say official figures anyway, the figures from the professional publishing world that I'm able to present, how would you assess quantitatively and qualitatively the, let's say, well, if not the reality, but let's say how much more is there really to how not necessarily in punctual numbers, but how big, how different is the reality of ebooks in your view compared to what the regular sales data allow us to think? Did ebooks really disrupt as much the book sector, or is it different but still within certain limits?
You asked me for the voodoo. Ready for the voodoo. I guess number one, and that's very important, the numbers that you present are the core from a very specific angle. Yeah, and that's important because it's the only consistent bunch of data that we have. And you know from your queries, your questionnaires, what you mean when you say a book, an audiobook, or an ebook. Yeah, not everybody else has that clarity. That is why, for me, what you are doing is the cornerstone, or is the basis. Yeah, that's the one thing. The second thing is, I guess overall, including the numbers that you have from a very sound approach, are missing a significant part of ebooks, let's say the normal ebooks. Yeah, we just came back from Madrid, where several people told me independently, well, in Spain, we assume that the market is 1/3 ebooks. Yeah, 1/3, 30%. And I said, well, do you have any source for that data, any reference? The answer was very clear cut: no, we don't, but everybody thinks so. So there is a kind of, and that's what I mean by voodoo, there's a kind of people move around and hear this and look at their own in-house data, etc. And you have a few large publishers like Planeta or Grupo Editorial of Penguin Random House. They know, and then they can make a comparison to what they know from Amazon, and that ends up with that number of 30%. I would assume in Germany or France that number must be lower. However, from what I read, self-published ebooks, and self-publishing means just a bunch of different models where an author somehow produces books without knocking at the door of one of your members. Yeah, that has expanded in scope over the past 5 to 8 years quite significantly, and that coincides with the peak of normal ebooks around 2013, 2014, when these numbers of the normal ebooks came down. I think it was not that ebooks were losing ground, but that the other platform-driven ebooks were spreading, and they were differentiating. This was in the majority romance, fantasy, science fiction, that kind of stuff. But you saw more and more small and middle-sized niches of other usages in ebooks appearing. Suddenly, under the pandemic, we saw that young adult reading, non-fiction reading, etc., was expanding. So lots of things going on there. And then, so that's what we talk about when we say somewhere between 20 and 30% are ebooks. And then comes in the wild gang, and that is the Webtoons, Wattpad, all these platforms, which pump content which is about narratives in words, in pictures, in mixes, which pumps that content where serialization plays a big role, which is an industry in their own right, which pumps that content on the screens of smartphones of the kids. And again, that is significant because if you look at just to say, we have no figures whatsoever portraying the entire market segment, but if you look at the deal when Wattpad was acquired by Webtoon 2 years ago in 2021, that was a high three-figure million dollar deal. So the Koreans won't have acquired a Canadian company for I don't remember exactly $600 to $800 million if it had a revenue of less than $100 million. Yeah, so it's massive, and therefore that's what I mean. We live, and all that was in a way directly or indirectly triggered by the mix of ebooks as a book format and the smartphone and tablets and other reading devices as a channel for distribution. Yeah, and ebooks and that distribution channel together have had and still have a massive impact, transformative power, and also turnover in the book business. And let me just wrap it up with one observation. Incidentally, the Kindle and the iPhone 1 came to the market in the same year of 2007.
Thank you for this reply, Rüdiger. We have a question. Andrea Becerra who says, thank you for the presentation. Both of them were very thought-provoking. Should we expect the change in the data collection and analysis, so small publishers, authors, and maybe other usages of ebooks that you mentioned will be included in the overall statistics so we can rely on it?
Well, that would be great, but we already have a hard time with the relatively easy part the market that is the one that goes through the main players, well, the professional publishers. Our collection as FEP relies on surveys of our members, so on the publishers that are members of associations. I am sure that if Amazon provided more data about their sales of ebooks, both as a retailer and as a self-publishing platform, that would contribute greatly to a more comprehensive picture. But so far, I must say, we haven't devised any system to convince them to provide the kind of data. But that would be a significant improvement. That's for sure.
I would very much agree with Enrico's cautious approach to that question. Changing the system of data or opening up the system of data collection would have a high risk of diluting the quality of the data and the consistency of data that you record, Enrico. And therefore, I'm fully in agreement with you. And I would underline, of course, efforts to ask not only Amazon, but Kobo, Rakuten, and a few others, Webtoons, to share some data. And perhaps you don't start successfully with the biggest one, with Amazon, but if there is some kind of informal, I don't know, arrangement where you find a few of these big ones to come up with a few ballpark estimates, that would help us greatly.
So thanks to everyone. We've gone a bit over the time limit for the webinar, so I think we'll conclude here. Thank you very much, Enrico and Rüdiger, for this presentation, insightful, and as we have seen, which is already raising some questions. Thank you, and to all the audience, feel free to engage in the discussion in the lobby chat if you have more questions, if you want to discuss. Our panelists also have access to it, so you can engage there. And we'll see you all this afternoon at 2 p.m. for a new session about the European Accessibility Act and its implementation with Fondazione Elia and ARCOM.
Thank you so
everyone.
much. Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye.